And you guys, she literally she shared this morning with us, and I was like, "Sabria, you got to share this here." So let's keep her encouraged for just being brave and just step right on up and say, "Okay, yeah, sure, I can do it."
Great job, Say.
Okay. Meaning of purity. Purity, relating to a person, is when someone separates themselves from worldly views or standards and learns to accept and love themselves for who they are. Purity also comes with how we carry ourselves. The way we dress, act, who we hang out with, and how we think tells a lot about ourselves. To be pure, you need to have a pure heart, pure mind, and carry pure characteristics. In addition, detaching oneself from materialistic items and living life according to the Most High Yah's commandments is what also makes you pure. Meaning of having a pure mind. Having a pure mind means that you have positive thoughts and emotions instead of them being negative, that can possibly lead to temptation or poor behaviors. Having a pure mind also means that you react to situations in a positive manner, meaning you don't indulge in falsehood or deception. Rating of beauty. The rating scale of beauty should be based on the way you view yourself. But truly, since we live in a society where people rate others based on how good they look, according to what fits their interest or type, is what lowers a lot of people's self-esteem. They feel like they aren't good enough for someone because they've been told that they're average looking, while the person that they're interested in is a 9. This leads to insecurities and self-doubt. Furthermore, don't allow the number scale to determine how attractive you are, but you can rate yourself on your overall well-being. Can point of views make your mind pure or impure? Yes. The way we view ourselves will most likely affect how pure or impure our minds are. The reason for that is because if we constantly put dismissive thoughts into our heads about ourselves, we are putting that into our long-term memory, which is something that will be brought up over and over again. Then that's when our minds become impure and it becomes more difficult to handle the kind and respectful remarks about ourselves. Can the company I surround myself with make my mind pure or impure? Yes. People who are not like-minded will find ways to manipulate you, get you to be like them, pressure you into doing things you're not comfortable doing, and give you reasons why you're weird for not thinking or acting like them. When you fall into their traps, your mind now becomes impure. When around like-minded people, you can learn new things, relate to those people on a deeper level, and have genuine connections with them. This creates influence to have a pure mindset. Can society make your mind pure or impure? Yes. When there's influence coming from different people from all backgrounds, it can make your mind pure or impure. For example, social media has a huge influence on younger audiences. It can either make them think differently about themselves or other people, behave in ways they normally don't, or encourage them to become a better person, become inspired to try new hobbies, and more. Just like how we can tell ourselves things that will either be beneficial or not, others can do it too. How does the adversary introduces lies and how to combat them? The adversary introduces lies by asking questions that makes you doubt your decisions. The opponent will weaken your confidence by making you overthink the situation, reassure that what they're saying is true, then tell you how useful the outcome will be once you've committed to the lie. To avoid this, tell the adversary what they're saying isn't true, tell them that the Father wouldn't approve of it, and don't move on with the lie. Step away from it. Biblical example of someone with a pure mind. One person that had a pure mind in the Bible was Moses. For example, he listened to God's commands by telling the elders of Israel how to prep their food for Passover, spread blood around the door frame, and to not leave their homes until morning. He explains to them the reasoning they have to do these things, and they listened. This verse can be found on Exodus 12. How does having a pure mind benefit me becoming a better servant to the Father? Having a pure mind will benefit me to become a better servant to the Father because I will have the proper knowledge of what it is that He expects for me to do with the life He has given me. Also, I will participate in traditions He wants me to, share what I know with others, and have a better understanding of how things work overall. Knowing why He does the things He do and what He has done helps me grow a closer relationship with Him. And that's all.
Great job. You guys, can we give her a round of applause? Great job, Say.
Thank you.
Hallelujah.
Awesome. Hallelujah.
Great job.
Yes. Great job. Great job. Great
Thank
job.
you.
Sarah, how old are you?
17.
She's 17, you guys. That presentation that she did is something that's the same quality of caliber that an adult would do. Like, let's just be honest out there. That's something that literally one of us would have done. Well spoken, very clear, very precise, going all the way through. I love just everything that she shared. It was absolutely beautiful, something that we can just apply to all areas of our lives. And I love how she really highlighted, as Ceciliana was highlighting, just the tax and how the adversary moves very strategically to introduce lies. And that also will happen. I know for some of you guys, when it comes with homeschooling, I've heard some of this is why we're here today. How am I going to be able to do it? This is not something I can actually do. How is this going to be feasible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, something that she highlighted in her presentation is being able to identify that and then using the word of the Father to combat that, to know that it's not true and it can definitely be done, right? The Father can surely strengthen us and give us the ability to do so. So I hope that you guys were encouraged by that, right? I mean, she is just, that was amazing. Very, just so clear. I love it. And the points were just, they were potent, very sound, sound advice and sound, words that she had there. So Father bless you, Say. Thank you so much for coming in, Princess, to share that. We do appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, so we are going to go ahead and jump into our presentation for tonight. We have here on the panel, this is just an overview of things that we are going to cover. Topics that we will hit on, breaking the myths about homeschool, right? What homeschool looks like for each of us. So we said, we know that we've read tons of blogs. We want you guys to actually see it real deal as it is, how I homeschool and how the panel homeschools, right? We're going to show you guys and just kind of talk you guys through that. Top resources that we use for homeschools, things that we use on a regular basis, things that we might have used in the past, etc. Testing, right? How do we test out children? How do we know that they're actually learning? Are they learning, right? Graduation. Yes, homeschool students do actually graduate, right? They do graduate, and we're going to talk about that. Social outlets. I've heard this tons, right? Just things that we do to actually keep them social. Money. How much does it cost to homeschool? Practical tips that we would share with any of you all as first-time homeschoolers. Some of you guys that are here are homeschooling, right? So we would love you guys to drop your tips into the comments, into the chat box as well, because that allows us to be able to pull, right, from everyone that's here to see it. And some of you guys have never homeschooled before, right? So we're going to share some tips that we use. And again, if you have homeschooled, or if you are homeschooling, please share that in the chat, right? Parents who need to work, but yet are still interested in homeschooling, right? And when homeschool is not an option. So if you are here and you're a parent and it's just like, I cannot homeschool, that's not going to be realistic for me. It's not going to be realistic for my family and my children for whatever reason. We have a few tips that we would like to share for that as well. And then of course, we will go ahead and open up and take questions from you all. As we're going, if you have questions, please go ahead and post them. For each section, if you have any questions, post them and Ayana will be gathering them and we will surely go ahead and cover those. Right. So without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to these lovely ladies here that are on the panel. I am blessed to be able to just sit here with them today. They both have fed me huge in many different ways. Zakia was one of the first that I've met that was homeschooling for such a long period of time when I was just in that stage of, You know, when I met her, my babies were really, really small babies. And I wasn't quite at that stage as of yet. And she was already homeschooling. And my mind was a little bit, you know, overwhelmed by it. But she has consistently shared things that she's done. So that was just really helpful to me. And then Sister Eliana, her and I met recently, more recent, but she is a huge wealth of information and has poured into me so much in just such a short period of time. She's about it. She is a speech pathologist. She's licensed, and her with her degree, it actually also licenses her as a teacher. So she's been in just in you know, as far as working with children and educating them and things of that nature. She's very much into looking into researching and things that, you know, that's going to be better for, you know, what's going to work for her family. So she has a well-rounded view on homeschool and just education in general. So I'm excited to be here with both of them today, and we are going to let them introduce themselves. Sorry, I went too quick there. All right, so Eliana, we are going to start with you, sis.
Okay, all praises. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. All praises.
Wonderful. Well, my name is Eliana Tefalati Yasharala. My husband, Yaatazai, and I run a higher learning academy for our two boys who are 11 and 12, soon to be 12 and 13. We actually, well, so I am from Harlem, New York originally, but moved here when my husband and I married. So back in 2007, I've been in Charlotte. And growing up, what type of school did I attend? I actually attended parochial school, AKA Catholic school, if you don't know what that is. Being from New York, being raised in the 80s, you know, a lot of the public schools are really crazy. So in my area, it was more like if you wanted your kid to graduate, you found a way to send them to some type of parochial school. So even though we weren't Catholic, I went to parochial school from K through 12th grade, which had a significant influence on me, spiritual, you know, my spirituality and how I got here today. But that's a whole nother conversation. Not in a good way, I'll put it that way. Nonetheless, we are homeschooling two boys, and we've actually only been homeschooling since 2020. So I hope, you know, I was a full-time speech pathologist before that time, and I hope to be able to bring some levity about people trying to transition to homeschool when you didn't start that way. What made us choose homeschooling? I've always wanted to homeschool. I actually was home with our boys until they were both school age. My husband at the time wasn't so sold on it. He was more concerned about, or not say more concerned, he was definitely concerned about their education, but he was also concerned about how homeschooling would affect them socially and that kind of thing. So the whole experience with the pandemic really helped us both to see the realities of what homeschooling could be and that we could do it. And so it really just gave us the boost we needed. We had planned to homeschool by middle school for sure. But like I said, the pandemic, you know, just pushed everything in gear very quickly. And I'm so grateful that it did. It was the best gift, you know, to our family, you know, that I could really ask for, to be honest. And I'm sure I'll have an opportunity to share more about that later.
Awesome. There we go. Thank you so much for sharing that, sis. Yeah, she knows tons. She really, really does.
All
And it's
praises
really
to the Most High.
all praises to the Most High. So it's going to be really neat to just to pull from you, sis. Absolutely. Vivi, introduce yourself, girl.
Hey, shalom, shalom. I am Zakia, that's my Hebrew name, and I also go by Bibi too, that's my nickname. And as far as where I'm from, so I was born and raised in Chicago. We moved to Arizona 4 years ago for really hubby's work, and also just wanted to be in an area where my boys can enjoy being outside. all year, as opposed to being holed up in the house during blizzards. As far as the type of school I went to growing up, was Chicago. I always say, like, in a funny way, I was born and raised in the Chicago public school system. And when I wasn't in school, I was in day camp. So I was never homeschooled, and I never knew anybody, like, growing up as a child that was homeschooled. I kind of got a taste of it when I was in high school. I had throat surgery. I had a tissue mass. So because of that, I was out of school for a week. And so my teacher came by and dropped off homework, and then also kind of like went over the homework. So I felt like that was my taste of homeschool, and I actually liked it. It was nice. I do have 5 boys, plus the 5 boys that I homeschool, and we call ours My People Live Academy. It's actually named after my 3rd born. His name is Ami Kai, and Ami means my people and Kai life. So My People Live Academy. And as far as like homeschooling, we've been homeschooling by the grace of the Father their whole life. It's funny, and I'll explain it more like in terms of like just what made me decide. It was really, I never had an intention to homeschool. Honestly, I just thought, like, the way I was raised, we were just going to put our boys in school. But my oldest, because in the state of Illinois, if they're not 5 by September, then you have to wait the following year to let them start kindergarten. And so I remember talking to a teacher at the school where we lived. There was a school across the street, which I wanted my boys to go to. And she was like, oh, just homeschool, like put them in a regionally accredited kindergarten program online. And so that way, the next year, they'll see their certificate. He doesn't have to test, and he can start kindergarten. And so I did that. And it's funny because, like, I actually had fun. And then it just turned into, by the grace of God, here we are 12, 13 years later. I just decided to keep doing it just because I loved it. I love teaching my babies. And it feels good, by the grace of the Father, to say, like, I taught my babies how to read, and teaching them different things, teaching them different language. Like, it's just, I love it. And so that's really, for me, what had motivated me. It was just that one thing with him not being ready because of his age. And so, yeah, and I've been doing it since. And that was the next question, but that was it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, sis. No, absolutely. And you have, she really does love it. I mean, it has been really encouraged me, with homeschooling, a totally different view, because she didn't look sad. She didn't look sad by it, when I'm like, okay, she doesn't look burnt out and sad. She's always like doing these dance videos and things. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, it's not the most horrible thing in the world then, because she's surviving, and she's not just surviving, she's actually enjoying it. So yeah, that was, I'm really happy, sis, that, the Father worked it out that way for us to meet when we did, because it really was an encouragement for me. So for those of you guys, my name is Ovadia. I am from Brooklyn, New York. I don't know if I'm from Brooklyn or Queens, New York. I've been living in, I think, the two for the same amount of time. So one of them. I'm from New York, though. Born and raised there in the public school system. And that was a very interesting experience. With it, it was not terrible. Elementary got real interesting. Middle school and high school, I was done. I was ready to be finished with it. As far as how many children I'm homeschooling, I'm actually homeschooling 4. So I have 4 children. But my youngest, he's not homeschool age as of yet. And I don't even like to say that, because technically he is, because we are introducing him to alphabet, right? So he's learning at his pace. But as far as curriculum wise, that's full-fledged curriculum wise, I have 4, because I have my nephew. So my nephew actually comes over and he homeschools with my 3 girls. We've been homeschooling. My daughter, my oldest, is 8 years old. So she's approaching 9, Father bless. And she was really early with reading. So it was the same thing like how we're doing with my son, with just introducing alphabet and going through things like that. She picked it up really quickly. So I noticed when she was around 2.5, we were going through a Barney alphabet soup, and she was able to recite it all the way back. And I'm like, oh, okay. She was picking up the sounds and things very quickly, very easily. And so we just started. It was like not a need to really wait, just to see how she would do at her own pace. But she was picking up the information very quickly. And so we just continue to pick up from there. We started, she learned to read very quick, and we just kind of continued. So I did not have intentions on homeschooling at all. I'm licensed, so I have my master's. My undergrad is in Spanish translation, and then my master's was linguistics, as well as language translation. So my focus was language. That was my focus of study. From there, I taught at the university for 7 years, Spanish, and then from there, I got licensed in K through 12 and started teaching within the public school system. So I was in the process of teaching there. I was teaching in charters, and then kind of merged into which charters. They were public schools, but they had more, had a bit of agency in how they could actually do things. It was a bit different in some regards, but for the most part, they had to still follow certain structures. And from there, I shifted into other different schools within K through 12 public. I was sure once I started teaching K-12 that I was not going to send my children. I didn't have that as my initial train of thought, but I knew it once I started teaching there that I wasn't. I just thought that maybe we would probably go the private route, and like I said, I had experiences where I was a part of a group, Sister Love group with Sisters IKEA, and she was homeschooling, and it just seemed so far-fetched for me at the time. I was already in the process of doing it. I just didn't realize that. But in the sense of doing it full-fledged, at that time I had 2 children. Well, I had one, and then I was birthing my other one. And I thought, okay, well, at a certain point, then we would go ahead and school them. But as far as putting them into a public school, but it just never happened. The father never gave me nor my husband peace with that. And we just decided that, okay, we would take it on and that we would homeschool them. So they've been homeschooling. They've never attended a public school ever. They've never attended any school outside of us homeschooling them. So that's been going. Again, my oldest started really early, and I just continued. So they've been, I feel, as far as just getting them going by 3, with their reading, and then just pumping in from there. So we've been doing it for, quite a while now. And I feel like I'm finally kind of finding my area with it. All right. So we're going to go ahead and jump right on over to some of the myths. And we wanted to know from you guys, while you guys can go ahead and post that into the chat, what are some of the concerns that you have about homeschooling? So when you think about homeschooling, what's a concern? Or, I know Eliana was sharing, like, as far as with her husband, just with socialization, things of that nature. What were some of the concerns, or what are some of the concerns that you guys have when you think of homeschool? Go ahead and post that in the chat. And while you guys are posting that in the chat, Zakia, we'll go ahead and start with you. I know you had some listed there. What were some of the concerns starting out for you?
So I know for me, one of the myths I thought was like, okay, what if my children wanted to be like on a sports team or something with the school? Are they able to do that? And that actually got debunked by, and I forgot to mention earlier, but I did know one sister, which was the only person I've ever known in my life that homeschooled at the time. This was before I was even married, that homeschooled her children. And she was the one whom I felt like the father used to introduce me to the curriculum that I use to this day. But she had told me, like, she had just started homeschooling her children at the time, because they were like, she had just took them out of public school. And she was saying how her child, her daughter, youngest at the time, was on the cheerleading squad. And I was like, oh, she could do that? Like, and she's homeschooled? She was like, yeah. And then I learned, like, even as years went by and I started meeting other homeschool moms, that, yeah, like, you can still partake. And so I haven't done that yet, because I know my oldest, he was actually starting to express interest in basketball, and even being a part of basketball camp, one of the coaches took an interest to him. But by the grace of the Father, he's starting a coding program this fall. And so we're just like, okay, we'll see, because I don't want to overburden him. But I learned, for me, was like, that was for me the biggest one personally.
Absolutely. Definitely. Right. Those are some common ones that are there, right? Especially if you're wanting your children to continue with sports, right? How do they do it if they're not in a school to actually join into it? For sure. Absolutely. What about you, Eliana? Yep, you're muted, sis.
Sorry, I don't know, my computer, like, you disappeared for a second, but you're back. Yeah, so yeah, like I was sharing earlier, one of my husband's biggest concerns was the socialization piece. Um, just didn't want the boys to be socially awkward, that kind of thing. It's interesting that Zakia mentioned that about sports because that was also an issue as well. And I would say those were the two biggest ones. So how do we kind of combat those? In North Carolina, you cannot actually participate in school sports if you're homeschooled. There are a couple of options for like high school if they do like an online high school through the school system. If they take at least 3 classes, I believe, in high school, they'll be able to participate in the school sports. But how we've done that because our eldest plays baseball and our youngest plays golf. And so we've done that through extracurricular activities and kept up with that. And they're doing really great. So um, there's been no, breakdown in that piece. The socialization piece is really interesting because all praises to the Most High, we have the opportunity to have a really close knit group of believers locally. And so we once we started homeschooling, we actually started a homeschool group with our congregation. So once a month, we actually have field trips. And then besides that, there are a couple of other things that we take part in as far as in the community. For example, so our eldest is really into coding and robotics. And so there's a robotics club that they go to during the year once a week. And there's also a chess club that we take part in. And yeah, but I did want to speak to the socialization piece because I thought it was very interesting. I actually had a conversation with my eldest this week, who, all praise to the Most High, has been given an opportunity to be given a scholarship to take a Mandarin course at a college. And he's turning 13 this week, this Friday. So all praises. But they actually started off for those first few years. They were in a Mandarin school, and so it was a charter school. And another one of our biggest concerns, now I'm thinking about it, was that they would lose the language. So that was the other thing, that they would lose the language because we had specifically put them in this emerging school. So long story short, he started the school. He did come across, I think, 2 of his old classmates, and he's actually ahead of one of them. And so that whole worry about him losing the language, we kept it up through tutors. It was not an issue. And then also the socialization piece, I talked to him about, and just was talking about that between him and his brother. And he was making the comments about how the other children are really weird, as he would say, because they're on their devices all the time. As soon as they have a break, they want to just get on their phones and they don't really talk to each other. And so the teachers have to force them to kind of put their phones away and that kind of thing. And he doesn't have that trouble at all. He loves to talk and to people and get to know them. And he's super personable. And it's funny because when I was talking to him about it, he described his younger brother as even more social. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. It's always interesting to hear how they view themselves and then also how they interact when you don't always have your eyes on them. So I've seen them interact, like I said, with within our homeschool group and things like that. But it's just cool to see their side of it and how he could even, as a 12-year-old, really identify like there's something odd about these kids. Like all they want to do is be on their phones. So the fact that we've been able to like pull that piece away and really help control that in a healthy way for them, they only get to play on electronics during the week. And I say that because sometimes, we have to use our computer for some things during the week for school, but they don't have that. They don't have a phone or those other kinds of things. And when they are in a social environment, they're actually required to socialize. So that has not been an issue at all. All praise to the Most High.
All praises to the Most High. Absolutely.
That's just
Um,
literally, yeah.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely. So I see here, and we're going to get we'll cover this very briefly so we can get to the other portion. But I see starting Shalonda with what you have, keeping pace with standardized testing and not getting behind, right? Another concern is that I will get frustrated. Will he have social skills? How to juggle work and homeschool? The cost? Absolutely. How well will they do if they have to take any state testing, right? Absolutely, because we want to make sure that they're able to compete still, right? That they are able to still have the rigor that they need to continue forward with their education, right? Fear of feeling frustrated and overwhelmed. Also, how to navigate curriculum and lessons with the different age ranges and grades. Great concerns, right? Absolutely. And I don't think that it's anything that we've mentioned thus far. Zakia and Eliana, you can let me know that I think that we have not. This is all familiar territory, some of the questions that are there. Absolutely. All right. So what I wanted to do here really briefly, I'm just going to read through this. I want you guys to hear just the myths, right? So the first myth that we have here, and I'm going to move quickly, right? If I homeschool my kids, they won't get into college, right? Think about some of that for those that asked about the state testing and things of that nature too, right? 69% of peer-reviewed studies on success into adulthood, right, including college, show adults who were homeschooled or home educated succeed and perform statistically better than those who attended institutional schools, right? Homeschool students go to and succeed at college at an equal or higher rate than the general population. Home educated students typically score above average on SAT and ACT exams that colleges consider for admission. Homeschool students are increasingly being actively recruited by colleges, right? Reason being is because it's showing that they are able to, for one, their GPAs, able to stay in college longer and actually complete their degrees. And in doing so, within college, their GPAs are actually showing to be a lot higher than those that are in college, even if they're making it through coming from institutionalized schools. So in order for that to take place at such a percentage, they're doing well, right? Myth number 2, very few people homeschool their children, right? We feel like some odd, weird freaks here because no one's doing it. Not true, right? More than 2.5 million children were homeschooled in the US in 2019, right? According to the US Census, right? That number fueled up, right? We obviously know with COVID to 4.5 and 5 million as of around 5 million or as of March 2021. But the thing about that is seeing what happened afterwards. With COVID, especially for me as being a teacher, I taught during COVID. What it allowed parents to see was what their children were being taught. And honestly, it allowed them to see the low caliber that they were being taught. They were able to see like, wow, if this is all they're learning and this is all they're doing for 8 hours out of the day, I can do it on my own. I don't really need to send them to do this. It actually equipped them with the skill to actually know that they could teach their children, right? Also, we get to see when the parents were complaining about the caliber of what their children were learning, there's also research to show that from in the past, where the US is always ranked extremely high within the top percentile of education, versus other countries, it's decreasing. It's decreasing and decreasing, right? Being ranked 38, right, out of 71 countries in math, right? 24th in science, reading. The average American reads at a 7th to 8th grade level. 7th to 8th grade, right? Unfortunately, it's even lower for our babies, right? A lot of African Americans, children, right? We're not even talking about, I'm talking about graduating. We're talking about at around 5th grade level. That's like, this is it, So a lot of parents are saying, if that's what it is, and this is what I'm seeing take place, and I can order materials and I can sit down and actually give the time and effort to my kids, I don't need to send them. I'll just keep them at home, right? Especially with all the concerns of safety that's taking place in schools. So I don't need to send them. That number has not just happened because of COVID, it's actually sort of leveled out up there, right? So number 3, one of the myths, my child won't be able to socialize properly with other children. And I think the sisters really, really hit that on the knot. They've covered that tons, right? So the socialization children get during homeschooling is healthier, happier, and more productive than the socialization that occurs in most traditional schools. Homeschoolers score above average on measures of social, emotional, and psychological development as a peer interaction, self-concept, leadership skills, family cohesion, participation in community service, and self-esteem, right? Think about what it was when you were in middle school. Think about what Sabria was just sharing in her presentation, that constant weighing yourself against these social standards, right? Those who have their standards, worldly standards that that these kids are in an emotional time with hormonally, and it's so much negative influence that they're getting, not just from peers, but from teachers and things of that nature. Whereas it's not that we don't see good and bad days with our children, but you will definitely see that they are more mentally healthy on so many different levels that you're not seeing that's taking place in in traditional schools, where we've been taught to believe that's just normal for this age range. You notice a difference. You notice a huge difference, right? Homeschool students are regularly engaged in social and educational activities outside of their homes and with people other than their nuclear family members, as Sister Eliana was sharing, right? In the sense of just for her congregation, her church, right? Where they are actually fellowshipping with, and all of the many other things that they're doing all throughout the summers. Like Kia's boys as well. They've been active in these things for an extremely long time. My children as well, from the time that, from little, my kids have always been out, active, involved in things. So they're learning how to socialize extremely early. So don't believe the lie that they're going to be these weird freaks that TV has pretty much told us that they'll be. It's a lie. It's not true. My child won't learn as well as he or she would in a traditional school, right? It's a lie. Homeschool children learn better than those in traditional schools. Why? Because their learning style, their interests, and their goals are the focus of their education. Homeschooling means your child's experience isn't about what is best for all. It's about what is best for them. And that's what makes it work, right? So from a teacher standpoint as myself, when we teach, you have to teach, they call it, Mercy, the word just totally left me. Nonetheless, I'll explain it. When you have a classroom of one teacher and 30 students, you have to diversify the curriculum. You have 45 minutes within certain blocks to cover this whole huge chunk of information. And I got students who are audio, that they more so tone into their audio, as far as they have to be able to hear certain things. My words have gone from visual learners, kinesthetic learners, etc. That's not also including the fact that you have students in the classroom of that 30, probably 10 to 15 of them have some sort of special need. So within that, because legally I have to make sure that I have you in a small group, that I'm factoring some time that you and I have one-on-one time together. I have to make sure that I have this on the board for you. I have to do all of these different things. So when you really look at it, in reality, parents, just being real, your kids are getting probably a solid 10 minutes of teaching in that target area. They're not being taught that entire lesson. What they are being taught, honestly, is how to work on their own and raise their hand when they need help. And they might get some input, they might not. And it's a schedule that the state that's passed down that teachers have to follow. A teacher is not going to teach something over and over until you get it. They're not going to change it over and over until you get it. They have a percentage, and a very small percentage at that. If this percentage of the kids are at least 65% and above, we can move on. We can move on. So you're going to have high achievers from those that have a good structure and a lot of input at home where parents are helping. And a lot of these students are the one that's causing that percentage to be there. And then you're going to have the ones who have no support at all, who are struggling, and not even because they can't get it. It's just not in a way that they're able to access it. They're going to fall through the cracks. And that's just what it is. So the thing that they're not going to learn as well is 100% a lie. It's not true, right? When you teach them at home, you know exactly what what they've learned, what they are not picking up. You get to learn how they learn. You get to learn what methods work best for them, when they need breaks, when they need to, you get to learn these things about them. So they are getting tailored instruction, which is surely going to help them succeed. All right, my kids will just sit at home all day, right? Well, this definitely, it boils down to the fact that homeschooling gives you flexibility. Your kids should not just be sitting at home all day, especially if you are, as the parent, are focusing on the fact that I want you to succeed. I want you to learn. Each homeschooler, each home, and the reason why they homeschool is different. But if you're doing it for the sake that I want you to learn, I want it to be for your betterment, then as a parent, you're going to make sure that you are still structuring time that they are following and that they are learning, right? So they're not going to just sit at home all day. You structure it for them. You tell them this is what your schedule is, right? And that's going to vary by home. Some are more freelance. They feel like, you know what, I'm an outdoorsy person. I want to go out. I want us to learn by actually experiencing, right? So we're going to go out and we're going to learn by being outdoors. We're going to head to the lakes. We're going to head to the beach. We're going to we're going to go to the mountains. We're going to do these different things. That is up to you how you decide to teach it. But in the sense of them just sitting home all day, this is what the perception is for those on the outside. I homeschool. Eliana, you homeschool. Zakia, you homeschool. Your boys is just sitting there all day doing absolutely nothing. staring at it. No, it's not, it's unrealistic.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely
No.
not. No way. It's a lie. They're not just sitting there looking around doing nothing all day. They're learning, right? So don't believe those myths that are pumped out there, right? I'm not qualified to teach my children. I think this is important because a lot of people feel that way. I'm not qualified to teach them, or, I don't want to hold them back. I don't want to limit them if they have the ability to go beyond what I'm actually able to do. That's a legit concern, right? So you may not know it, but you have been your child's most important teacher all along, right? So you taught them the very basics of the things that they need to know. You were teaching them weekly. You guys would, Shabbat services, or, things of that, worship, right? Learning of the Father. You guys are teaching them morals. You guys are teaching them values. You guys are teaching them how to have, a character that's acceptable and pleasing outside of this earthly realm. That is definitely way more valuable, right, than teaching them things that you could easily get materials that will break it down, or that you can reach out and get support with, right? So we get to see here, and I'm going to go say one thing before that. It says here, homeschool students score above average on achievement tests, regardless of their parents' level of formal education. That's regardless, right? Whether homeschool parents were ever certified teachers is not related to the children's academic achievement, right? You have tons of parents who have not gone past high school or whatever, and their children, it's not showing, through the stats, it's not showing an impact on the on the child. Because again, as a homeschool parent, when it's coming to, you're going to choose curriculum that's going to work best and based off of that child. You're also going to reach out and find programs and find support that's going to be able to pour into them and give them what they need if you feel that you are not able to do so. The way that the programs are set up, you really do train children to kind of have that where they learn independently, but it's also the way programs are tailored, with so many online programs, so many outside sources. Where we even have here at the YMCA, we have a homeschool program where you have math teachers, you have history teachers, you have all sorts of teachers that are within a homeschool network that can teach. You have co-ops where students will join in there, and you have teachers who are certified teachers, those who are really strong in certain areas, those who have degrees in areas that pour into kids. So don't ever feel, because you feel like you don't actually have the background to do it, that it's going to stop them from being able to do it. That's not true. All right, myth number 7, my children won't have access to extracurricular activities. I don't even feel like there's a need to even touch that. That's a lie. We've seen in the chat those that said their children, I think Zena, she was just saying that her daughter is doing coding. Eliana, Zakia's boys doing coding. I know that there are all sorts of programs that Eliana's boys are in. My girls have been in tons when it comes to extracurricular activities. It's the sky's the limits, really. So that's not true. If it's linked, a lot of times there are programs that's linked through the school. But if it's not linked through a school, trust you me, there are thousands of other programs that are out there. It's simply just researching or going according to the interests of your child. So that's not true, right? Myth number 8, my child won't learn the right things. They will, right? So one of the main reasons parents decide to homeschool is because they don't believe in the public school system and teaching the right lessons and instilling proper values, right? So because some of you all are, coming from a faith-based standpoint, and you want to teach things according to your principles, your morals, as we put there, your standards, your curriculum, you have the option to do so, right? You have the option to do so, and you're going to make sure that if you are obviously still wanting them to test with certain things, you blend in the curriculum. But this is the beautiful thing about it. If you're teaching certain portions of history, you have the ability to teach them history from the standpoint that it actually is, right? So it wouldn't be that they don't actually know it, but you get to give them all of the truth behind it. So this is the extra added benefit that you have as the homeschool parent. So they'll surely learn the right things. They'll have everything they need to, and more, as the stats show, right? Myth number 9, homeschool families are all alike. That is a lie, right? We're not all alike. We don't all have the same reason why we're homeschooling. We all don't focus on the same things within homeschool. We don't even all have the same standards. Some of us still want our children to go to higher education. Some don't. Some feel like, I don't want my children to have to go through homeschool in order to get a college degree. Some of us do. Some feel like, I want to, more so focus on only trade. I want to focus on only biblical culture. Some feel like, I want to have a mix. I want to kind of, so it's not the same. It's not the same. Each household is different. Each focus will be different. Each desire and each goal for your child is going to be different. The commonality is that you want to have your hand in the pot. You want to be able to make sure that they're getting the best that you have set for them, right? That's the common ground. But in the sense of it being a standard across the board, I have to meet the standard, or I have to do exactly as Ovadia is doing it. Not true. I have to do it exactly as Eliana or Zakia is doing it. Not true, right? That's not going to be how it works for each of our homes. However, community is the beautiful part of homeschool, and it's what allows it to grow, because you can still pull. You can still get a lot. I've gotten tons from Zakia and what she does with her boys. And I've gotten tons from Eliana just with certain things that she's doing with her boys to incorporate with my nephew and with my girls. So you can always benefit from each other. That's the beautiful thing about homeschool, because it is community based, but it is not the same per household. And the last myth that we have here is all homeschool services are the same, right? Again, not going to really spend much time here because that's essentially hitting on the last thing there. But for those, we didn't really hit on it much. Even if you have students that are dealing with special needs, be it speech, or be it, autism, or be it, whatever, there's several different ones, learning disabilities, right? ADHD, etc. Homeschool is really awesome. And there are still tons of resources out there to still make sure that they are being serviced, right? With your care wrapped all around them and not just being tossed through the cracks, so that they are still getting what they need and growing. Right. So there's so many options that are out there to homeschool. Really, I don't know any that takes it away from, I don't know an option that a traditional student has that a homeschooler does not. I kind of feel like homeschoolers have more, if you want to be honest, way more support, way more access to things, way more experiences. I feel like there's more that's there. But so that's just to say that anything that is offered traditional wise, it's not declined on the other end of the stick. Right.